Hello, welcome everyone to our kickoff event for launching on the high street. Opening a physical store is really like going on a journey. So we're going to present this as different steps that you're going to take on that journey. And we're here to help you with that. So opening a physical store is not just something independents do or small shops do on our high streets. We're starting to see like really big brands, even Amazon. They see the value of having physical stores on the high street. And or this could be just part of your dream. You've always wanted to open up a small cafe or a salon or a shop. And you know, there's a lot to think about in order to do that. And so this is all about giving you those 6 steps to help you on that journey. And that's what we're going to share with you today. And we're going to give you top recommendations for each one of those steps from our expert advisors that we have with us here on this event. We've got Sophie, we've got Andrew, Paul, and Alex, and myself. We'll all be helping you through each stage of the journey for launching onto the high street. Now, at the end of the event, you can ask us any questions that you may have to help you get on this personal path to reaching your dreams to get on the high street. And now, over to Alex.
Thank you, John, and thank you all for joining us today. Here at Save the High Street, we're on a mission to help high street entrepreneurs unlock their potential at every stage of their journey. And for many watching this today, stage 1 will be to launch into a high street, market, or shopping centre location. This has never been more important, and in many ways, it's never been easier. The gaps left by national chains and thousands of local brands who've disappeared from high streets around the UK will be filled by a new generation of entrepreneurs. And we're here to help make this happen at scale with unique access to space, support, and solutions this year. And this all kicks off today. As John mentioned, over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to focus in around 6 key pillars or the 6 key steps to launching your first or your next physical premise. We've got Sophie, Andrew, John, Paul, myself, all going to focus in on different steps of the journey. And once we finish today, you'll receive a link to get started on part 2. This is the planning process. We're going to work to help understand, from our point of view, to understand your business and the opportunity ahead for your brand. We've got a team of experts and coaches at hand who are going to be working to look at the long-term path for your business. What is the ambition that you have and what are the steps to get there? And then focusing in on that first step, launching on the high street, to develop a very specific tactical action plan to help you get there. We have limited space in terms of the amount of businesses we can support at this stage for free, but for many on the call, and in this first generation of new high street businesses we support, we're going to be looking to get this first planning phase kicked off as quickly as possible and really get you started. We'll then move on to part 3, and that's about making it happen. As I said, you've got this short-term plan as well as the long-term path to achieving whatever your ambitions are for your business. And that short-term plan is going to be full of projects made up of individual tasks that need to get done. And for each of those tasks, we'll guide you. We'll provide DIY step-by-step guides, training, and a whole range of premium solutions to get things done in as little as a couple of clicks. All of this is brought together by Joe. Joe's your own personalized digital assistant, designed to make it quicker, cheaper, and easier to take your business to the next level. Everyone will be able to access Joe and ask for help on anything, anytime. But as I said, for those in this group, we'll also be putting a team of experts and coaches onto this next key phase, the planning process, to help you really accelerate to that next stage and be on the high street. Some of those experts you're going to meet today, including Sophie from our success team, who's going to introduce you to step 1 of the journey. So over to you, Sophie.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. It's really lovely to meet you. So, I mean, launch on the high street is a really exciting step for any business. And I personally have spent many years working on the high street and working in high street businesses. And I found there's something really special about working in these areas and working with and serving the local communities that you just can't get online in the same way. So let's think about how we get started. You've got an idea. The first step is really to think about those foundations and ensuring that your journey starts with these really core basics and set yourself up for success from day one. So the 5 key focus areas within this space, your foundations, is firstly, develop your idea. This is your why. So there's a few ways you can do about this, but why are you wanting to launch on the high street? Why are you wanting to launch this business? What is your why? Understanding your market. Where is your niche? How do you fit within that? And who's already been served within the space that you're trying to enter? Who could your customer be? What do they want or need? This is really your first step, developing the idea. Then it's about bringing the idea to life. It's a bit more of your how. How are you going to fund it? Is it your own income? Are you looking for a government grant or potentially a bank loan? What products or services are you looking to bring to the market? How do you prioritize what you launch when? And how do you decide what those products and services actually are? How do you reach your customers? How do they even want to be reached? And are there particular times of days that you may want to start to think about this? Will you need a team, or can this come later? Really thinking about how we bring the idea to life ahead of following up with really setting up a business. There's many different ways that you can do this, but the real foundations here are you a sole trader or are you a limited company? How do you register your company and secure your domains for online and for websites and social media accounts? And again, if you have a team, do you need to set up things like PAYE? The really core basic foundation to set up your business. The next step then is thinking about creating an identity. And I don't just mean logos or the colour of your shop front, although they are brilliant. I'm thinking about developing a mission, a vision, and real values for your brand to ensure consistency and alignment from day one. It means defining the services you want to provide and how you want to provide it, and ensuring that carries on throughout the journey with you and the team that join you along the way, as well as your tone of voice, the atmosphere, and your USP, unique selling point. Finally, your go-to-market strategy. What does it look like? You've already had to think about why you're starting the business and recognizing that you want to launch on the high street, and you know who you're wanting to sell to and how. But the next thing to determine is the where and the when. When do you launch? Do you do a teaser before the shop opens? Do you do a soft launch? Maybe have a big event. How do you inform your target audience of your launch? And where do you position your business? Lots to be thinking about in your initial setup before we really get the ball rolling, and that just ensures that you're set up for success from day one, and you can ensure that you have that sustainability and consistency throughout your business journey. I'll hand over to Andrew now, who will talk a bit more about finding and securing a space.
Thank you, Sophie. Appreciate that. It's great to be here. It's Andrew from the Credo Group. I've been a commercial agent and a retail consultant for about 25 years. And I would say now is probably one of the most exciting, if not the most exciting times to be in the retail sector. At the same time, it's probably the most challenging, but at the same time, it probably offers the most opportunity, especially for independent retailers looking to get onto the high street or open physical stores. But you've probably already got to the stage whereby you've sourced out your product offering and what you're looking to open, and you have a good idea of where you want to be. You've probably narrowed down to a local high street or a local town centre nearby where you live, or that you know well and you're comfortable with. And there's no real substitute for boots on the ground. I always say, go and test out the high street, or if it's a shopping centre you're looking at, you should spend hours there and days there. Go there on a wet Monday afternoon, the middle of the week, go for the weekend, and really just check out the location. These are basics, but basics which need to be done well and done in some detail. There's so much data online as well at the moment. The big agencies such as Jones Lang, Knight Frank, CBRE, their research their research reports are packed full of information which helps identify strong towns and trends in local towns. And you can speak to the local agents as well. Most towns have local commercial agents, experts, and catch them at the right moment. They're more than happy to help give you advice as to what's going on in each town and such like. So speak to the local agency, speak to local traders in the area, and boots on the ground, and you'll get a good feeling as to where your demographic is and what's happening in your town centre. One of the big changes which has happened over the years since I've been in the commercial market or the retail market is the length of leases and the flexibility that's available. When I first started out, it was typical for a landlord to insist on a 25-year lease, and really it was only the multiple retailers in the mid-90s that they were interested in speaking to, so the likes of Clinton Cards, Gap, Next, River Island, you'll think of the names, but because of the downfall and disruption to physical retail, landlords are now interested in curating and offering space for independent retailers, especially those who can bring something new and exciting to their store or to their space. So really, the flexibility, Box Park were a good example of who did this at the outset, and when they started about 2012, providing space for hours, weeks, or up to a year they were doing at the time for you to suck it and see, and then work out if you were trading well and negotiate a longer lease ideally in the same unit or elsewhere in the locality after you've worked out that your offering does work. So flexibility is there now. If you're incurring heavy shop fit costs, of course, it's important to try and secure yourself a longer lease because you'll have more time to amortize your fit out costs. But a number of landlords at the moment will give you lengthy rent frees or assist with your fit outs, especially if they like your trading style and what you're going to offer their unit or their shopping centre. So once you found your store and your location, and you want to take either a long or a short-term lease, you want to probably get down to a short list of units and work out the sort of fit-out costs and what each landlord will offer. You can either have a white box unit from a landlord, whereby they'll just give an enhanced shell specification, and you'll be asked or tasked to fit out the unit. But really, there should be some rent-free available to a good tenant who they're attracted to. And I would say that if they're not really interested in you as a tenant and not prepared to offer flexible terms in the current market, there's no need to sign up and engage with a landlord who doesn't really get your offering. So get yourself down to a short list. Find out what's in the locality as well. So are there restrictions on loading? Are there where's the nearest car park? Is there a bus stop nearby which is going to bring footfall? So sort of carry out these sort of basic but important bits of research into each unit, and then you get onto your landlord negotiations. As a local retailer or an independent retailer or a new startup, the most difficult thing can be to present yourself in the best light possible. And it can and is often a useful idea to engage with a local commercial agent who will, of course, need a fee. But what they will do is present you in the best light to the letting agent or the landlord of the shop. Once you're more established and you've got a few branches open and running, then you'll gain more traction with the landlords. But at the very outset, if you find a commercial agent that you know, like, and trust, they will give you good advice. They'll negotiate for you. They'll look to build up a relationship and hold your hand through, hopefully, a number of site openings. So really, I would argue it could be a full saving by not agreeing to use or not instructing an agent to hold your hand in the first few deals that you do. They should avoid you making mistakes. Rent reviews typically have been every 5 years. Lease lengths are often no longer than 5 years now. So you may face a rent review at the second or third year. For a 5-year lease, you should expect somewhere in the order of 6 months rent-free. More if there's less demand for the unit and the landlord really appreciates what you're going to bring to their site. And a commercial lawyer is going to probably cost you about £3,000 to secure the lease or the license on your behalf. So that's a factor. That's a cost factor as well. But in terms of your sort of main outgoings, these of course are rent and rates. Rates are typically 40% of historic rents. They will go down over the course of time because they're measured against open market rents, and of course open market rents are going down. So eventually they will track southwards and be less of a burden to retailers. But you should be paying. So rents are agreed obviously on an annual basis. You should be paying monthly in advance. It used to be quarterly in advance. And as I say, you don't want to be paying rent for your first 3-6 months, or possibly a bit longer, as you set up your business, absorb your shop fit costs and drive your footfall. Negotiate hard. You'll obviously find that the better space with the higher footfall is going to cost you money. So you're going to have that conundrum to weigh up. Should you be paying more for a good site, or would you rather take a more secondary or tertiary site, pay a lower rent and take less of a risk? Those are things you're going to have to factor in. But as I say, it's never been a better time as a local retailer, an independent retailer with a good idea to get going on the high street. So that's me. Over to you, John.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. That was really interesting. So now that you've got a space, you've done all that and you have your shop now, it's time to do something with it. And this is where designing your customer experience comes. And rather than saying store design or visual merchandising, I like to use the term customer experience, because that's what a physical store is. And this is the advantage of a physical store over online, is that it's an experience. This is why people shop now. They don't necessarily shop to buy things. It's not transactional as it used to be. It's more experiential. So how do you create this experiential space now that you've got 4 walls and glass, or maybe it's even a market stall, anywhere from a market stall to a shared space to a freestanding store? It's all the same principles apply here. So the first thing is what we call merchandising. And that's all about having the right product at the right time, in the right place, for the right customer at the right price. So you need to set up your product or services to fit the location that you've chosen, and you need to know your target market. So say if you're an online seller, we've had this with someone from Hounslow. We did a project with a Biotopia, and she had a very large product range that she sold online. Well, how do you choose what to put in the store? And that's the skill and the art of merchandising, is knowing what to put in the store, and also where to put it in the store. So you have to think about the traffic, the customer flow, the window display, expensive items, inexpensive items, your best sellers, your new products. It's a bit of a puzzle you have to put together, but it's something that visual merchandisers love to do. And I've done that for like over 30 years. So, and this is what leads to kind of what we call the 360 degrees of the store. You have to think of your space from the inside out, the outside, the signage, the window, what it's like when you first walk in, the selling space. You really kind of want to deal with the whole 5 senses. So you want to have music, maybe even smell. What's the ambiance? How are you selling? What are you selling from? Do you need a cash desk at all? Or do you have the kind of business where sitting down with your customers is important? So you have to think about how you're going to be serving the customer, and that's all going to help you decide what type of furniture to put in there, not just the furniture you need to sell your products or services. And of course, the decoration of the store, you're just going to leave it a white box. If it's a pop-up or a temporary, you might have to leave it that way. But if you have the store for a while, why not, give it as much character as you can to make it special and unique, to you. And we offer a lot of this help on Joe. We can take you through all of this. And but customer experience is more than just the physical space and their shopping experience, but it's really this kind of very personal relationship that they can have with you as an independent on the high street. And again, this is something that online brands really struggle to do, is to have that personal connection with their customers. And this is something that independents can really thrive at and actually chip away at this online. Online's been chipping away at us, the independents, but we can chip back, by really developing these personal skills, dealing with customer service, train yourself, train anybody working for you to know the product inside out and be able, to deal with customers as best as you can, and have a customer's relation management system where you can collect information about that customer so you can market to them later, to do newsletters and that sort of stuff. So a lot of things about customer service, salesmanship, training, collecting feedback, training your staff, having loyalty schemes. All these things really play into creating, the kind of well-rounded customer experience. And that now, more than ever, I've used the term experiential retail quite a bit in this, but it is really about creating that. So a store these days, and I'm a store designer and freelance for a store design agency. So retail design now is really moving towards what we call these flexible spaces. They allow events to take place. So at the end of the day, when the store closes, it can very quickly convert over to tables and chairs for people to come around and have a workshop or have a lecture or have some sort of in-store experience. So it's quite important when you think of your store that what type of experiences can you give your customers? You could even sell tickets for these things. They could learn how to make things, or they could see how you make things or how your products are made. There are so many ideas for having workshops. And you could take these events to outside your store. You could get together with other businesses on the high street. If you have a traders association, you can come up with different street promotions and different events on the whole street, which are business orientated, which can help drive footfall and conversion to all the businesses on the high street. So it's really important to collaborate locally. And then I'll throw another industry term at you, phygital. And phygital is the combination of physical and digital, or a lot of people also kind of call it omni-channel. And that's where you kind of create this seamless experience for the customer, whether they're going to buy online or buy in store. Because what people do now is they might come into the store and not buy it there in the store, but they might buy it online if you have a website or an Instagram. You don't know when they're going to buy it. So people browsing in the store, if they haven't bought anything, it doesn't necessarily mean you've lost a sale. So you don't quite know how they're going to re-engage with you again. So that's why it's really important to have this really good balance and a consistency between your physical space and your digital space. So that's why it's important to have a good website or good Instagram, all this social media. That's really, a lot of work to do. You just have to consider it as an extension of your physical store, and then be able to offer your customer services like click and collect and different things like that to make it very easy for them to buy it how they want to buy it. And that's where customer shopping habits have gone. And the pandemic has led them even more down that path of being able to choose whether they want to buy it in store or online. But the important thing is that they buy it with you in the end of the day. So you want to give them this experience where they stay loyal to you and they like you because there's something different, special, and personal about you. So that's really, in a nutshell, what it is to design a customer experience. So next, I'll pass it over to Paul, who will help you understand everything that goes behind all of this, the back office part. So Paul, you there?
I am.
Paul,
Have I appeared?
you have appeared.
Okay, fantastic. I don't know what's going on here. Having a bit of a computer meltdown. Well, thanks everyone for spending time on this webinar this afternoon. Hopefully it's going to be of some use. I'm going to sort of rattle through some things, and this isn't an exhaustive list of things. This is to give you an indication of the sort of things that you should look for, and things that through our own experience, and I've been doing this for, I don't know, 15 years or so now, working with small businesses, and the sort of the pitfalls and the oversights that a lot of businesses have. So I'll cover this in order. So in terms of planning for opening, some things to think about. In terms of leases, which I know have been covered off in terms of rent-free, which is incredibly important, is ensuring that you first of all have a plan. You have an understanding of your business, and raw, in a very raw fashion, try and project what you think you may do in terms of sales, because that will determine what your net position is and what you'll be able to spend on things like rent and rates and so on. Because what you don't do is go in blindly, and that's a process, again, the team can help you work with. It may sound a little bit overwhelming, but actually it's not that complicated, and it isn't necessary to come up with a precise answer. It's to come up with an indication of where it may be. The other things to think about when you're taking on a store is fixtures and fittings, and being resourceful about this. This isn't about going to a retail supplier that supplies a national brand and buying this stuff new, because you've got Gumtree, you've got eBay, and a bunch of other resources which you can tap into that will sometimes be offloading this stuff for free. You know, for example, I know as me and John know, Debenhams, when they've closed, were quite happily, well, not them, but the landlords were happy to clear out a lot of the kit. So by all means, knock doors, ask questions. Have they got any old kit that's available that you can get hold of, offer to take you free, or offer them the notionary sum for it, and you'll save thousands, probably tens of thousands on things. Set goal budget sales. So over a 12-month period, you want to project this. And again, this is something the team can help you with. So look at the next 12 months, look at where you want to be in terms of your sales. You will be able to break down your cost of sale and your product and your staffing costs and so on. And you should end up in a net position. And be aware, in your first year, you may not make very much at all. I mean, the joke with entrepreneurial is it's at long hours and terrible pay, but you're your own boss. And that in time it will bear fruit, but it's a long game, not a sprint. Cost of sale, something that a lot of small businesses really overlook. I'll talk to some of our businesses, and they'll say, we've had a good week and wave 100 or 300 quid at me, of which part of that is the products of which they bought to sell. So that's what cost of sale is. So you have to look at this stuff soberly. They say turnover is was it vanity and profit is sanity, isn't it? So that's the type of thinking that you've got to have with any sort of business. And then take into account rent rates and utilities. And I think that's already been covered off in what they can be. But you're in a strong driving seat to determine what that rent should be. And in terms of locations on that, just to swing back on that a little bit, I would argue or put forward that the position of where you have your store is incredibly important. If you go to subprime, so backstreet locations, you could be seeing 200 people pass your shop a day. Take a typical shopping centre, let's say one in Kent, you're looking at 150,000 people a week, and on a Saturday you see 30,000 people. So it's incredibly important that your business gets exposure, and it's worth the premium. And there's lots of ways you can approach that and still do deals even with shopping centres. And staff costs, don't overlook that. Another common flaw is that people seem to think, well, it's 40 hours a week. No, because it's 7 days a week, and you're generally working 9 to sort of 6. And so it's much more than that. So you have to calculate these costs in, but be resourceful. There's people that bring in family, friends, sons, daughters, whatever it takes to get that thing open and running, certainly for the next 6 months. And then you'll start to develop a cash flow that will put you in a position where you can start to really invest in the business. And then staff contracts, again, a bit of an oversight. People don't think they're very important. And I'll give you a very specific example where I was working with a small business that didn't have these, got taken to the cleaners by a few of their staff. And then we put in various clauses and contracts in place. And most recently, this is only in the last few weeks, one of the staff decided that they were going to compete against her around, I don't know, 20 feet, 30 feet away in a competing store. However, in the contract, I put a non-compete clause, of which was then, do you remember this? They then pulled the deal and are still working for her. And also in terms of loyalty, and I say this with a degree of experience with this, is that this individual worked for her for something like 10 years. So I think it's not about having these in place because you don't trust, it's having them in place because if you need them, they're there to protect you and your business. So that's planning for opening. In terms of admin, I would certainly look at things like quality of your accounts. It's very, very important that you know your money in, money out, basic stuff. I, certainly encourage, if you can ever afford it, to have a bookkeeper that can deal with Sage and Xero and all this sort of stuff. But again, the team here within Save the High Street can give you some guidance about how you can best economize that. EPOS systems are worth investing in. And there's a lot of systems now that will have a combination of both PDQ, so your payment systems, and EPOS systems combined, because they want you to buy their products to put your credit cards through, and they'll provide you with systems of EPOS as well. And an EPOS system, in case people aren't aware of that, that's the buttons on the screen that will do everything in terms of giving you top sales. It will give you monthly, weekly, daily figures, what's selling, what's not selling. It's incredibly useful as a tool, and certainly imperative for any business that wants to grow. Having a pricing system as well, having prices on the shelves and on the products, I think is incredibly important. That's the way we're wired to shop. We don't like to pick up something with nothing on it and go to the counter and ask the question. It's not natural. And also in many cases there are sort of sales of good act laws in which we have to have these things priced. But fundamentally, the idea, and we've talked about the importance of the way in which we sell product, it's about mechanical sales systems, as they would say in IKEA, which means that you, without a human, the person can get it, see it, understand the price and purchase. So the more of that you have, the better, because you can't serve everybody. It's just not possible. Tracking of sales and product performance. This is really important, and take into account the cost of sale and lead time of product. So knowing what's selling and what's not selling is really important, and a massive flaw within businesses where people seem to buy instinctively. They buy stuff they like, not what people want to buy. I learned probably a long time ago, probably 30 years ago, my first job in sales, that my opinion didn't matter. It was about what the customer thought mattered. And if you get that right and you start to really understand what sells and what doesn't, two things you do. First thing you learn is that 25 to 35% of your sales account for probably 75% of your turnover. Step one. Secondly, of the residual sum that's not selling, you can start intelligently phasing it out and clearing it through and putting money back into your business to do other things with. But you do it intelligently, using data and not using guesswork. So that's really important. I just made a point there as John was going through his bit. Music licensing is another thing you need to be aware of. If you're going to play music in your store, you need to account for music licensing, which I think is about 150 quid a year, something like that. I think it's based on square footage. Unless you've got your own music. If you've got your own music you've composed, you don't have to pay anything. So maybe there's a hack there. PDQ machines, I mentioned, with EPOS systems, there's loads of them around. Again, the team here have huge contacts and power of reducing the cost in that area for you. And that is an absolute minefield. There's a bunch of them out there. Some are much better than others. And again, the team here can give you some real guidance on that. Some basic company policies. Food hygiene certificates are obviously key if you're going to be selling food. And then if you have over 5 employees, you've got to have a health and safety policy in place that's put together by a health and safety expert, which again the team can help you with. So that's fairly important. But there's a number of company policies in terms of insurance policies. You want PLI, public liability insurance, employee insurance. Tends to be geared towards the turnover of the business. So if you're turning over, for argument's sake, 500,000 a year, it will be about 500 quid, give or take, something like that. And depends on other risks. So there's if you're doing beauty and applying things to people's faces, things, it goes up a little bit, but generally that's as a rule of thumb. Stockroom. So stockrooms and the layout of stockrooms. This is again an area that people really overlook. So the way that I could best describe a stockroom is the back of house shop floor. So if you think about if you go into Tesco, if you go into a multinational, you want to be able to source the product relatively easy. Now, I'm sure they keep moving bread, I appreciate, but nevertheless, you can generally find what it is that you're looking for. But everything should be logical and everything should be laid out in a certain way. What you also want to do is your fastest product. So we talked about that bit of analysis. When you've got those 25, 30, 40, 50, 60 products, they're right at the front of the stockroom at nearest the door. Because common sense tells you I don't want to walk to the end and try and find it, dig it out. But it all should be laid out like a shop floor, shelves, pegs if necessarily, and markers. So when you're out of the stuff, it's apparent, because if you have had theft, your system won't show it. And internal theft is a reality, sadly, but these things occur. But that thing will indicate where you don't have stock. And then have order up to levels. So think about how much stock you should have at any given time. So you might say, I always want 5 of these things in stock. And that's generally driven by your lead time on that product. So if you can turn it around and get the stock in a week's notice, you should always have 1 week's worth of stuff. If it's a month, you have around a month's worth, if you want that product on the shelf when any time a customer comes in. But again, these are things that the team have systems that can assist you with. And then basics, packaging, bags, baskets in the store, things that allow people to, baskets are, again, something that's really overlooked, and it drives up the average transaction. And the average transaction, in case we're not familiar with what that is, that's if you go to a shop, a till, you buy one thing that's £3, your average transaction value is £3. So the goal is, how do you drive that upwards? So you drive it with associated lines. So you'll see this as you go into a shop. If you buy something that needs batteries, they'll offer you batteries to go with it. And suddenly your ATV is £5 and £6. And that's how you drive your business up. That means you do the same volume of transactions, the same amount of work, but more money in the till. So that's where you're driving towards. Ticketing in the store, a bit like the stockroom, allowing you to replenish. You should be able to see where everything is within the store. So price up things, perhaps on shelf bed pricing. Again, John's an expert in these areas, and sometimes you have barcodes on there allowing you to access an order as you go around, depending on how clever you want to be with it. But certainly you want to know what's missing on any given shop floor. And then there's lead times, local home delivery costs, and there's costs associated. So looking at how it is you tap into the local market, there's a big drive on the sort of 1 mile radius within most towns about how it is that you get products to the local customer. And there's lots of resource out there for that. And again, I won't go into a vast amount on that, because again, the team can help drive and give you some indications about how best to approach that. But that opens up your market considerably. And just sort of finish it this is something I come across on a pretty regular basis, the obstacles that you will find as you go through developing and owning your business. And what you'll tend to find in time is that resource or lack of resource is never the problem. It's the resourcefulness of the individuals and the businesses themselves, how it is that you find the way forward. That's the key to being an entrepreneur, certainly a successful one. So you can't allow small bumps in the road. If you look at the reasons not to do something, your mindset needs reversing. And it's very much one about how it is that I make this happen. Imagine you've got to make it work, you've got to make it happen, and your mindset changes significantly. It's a bit of a burn the boats thing, but it ultimately will allow you to be much more successful. And just to finish on that, I'll give you an example of someone that worked for me. There was a store that I set up many years ago in Slough, where it was a young Polish woman came in, wanted to take on a store. She took on one of the most difficult stores, which was an old bank. Now, when you take on an old bank, you have big, thick glass, you have safes that no one wants to take out because they're not worth anything. Nightmare. Anyway, so we did the deal, did a lease. I helped her determine a rental figure that worked for her, worked for the landlord in terms of rates offset, and we all signed the deal. She turned that from a bank to a store within 24 hours. The way she did it was incredible. She brought in what looked like 30 members of her own family, from parents to kids, and she was, ruthless is the right word, but she was full on in terms of making sure that things were done in the way they needed to be done. And she was open now at 9 o'clock the next day. If I said to someone open a store next day, they'd say it was impossible. It clearly isn't. As long as you've got the drive, the resource, and the resourcefulness to make it happen, you'll make it happen. So that's me covered. I think the next person is Alex.
Yeah, back to me. Thank you, Paul. So we have literally hundreds of recommendations for attracting more customers through the door. And even if we specify down into the launch phase, picking 5 was always going to be tough. What have we left out? Many, for starters. John's touched on window displays, but setting up your window display obviously has a big impact in how you get people walking past to come through that door, and updating that window display regularly. Social media, there's tons of stuff going on here, but there's specifically a whole bunch of more growth hack type activities you can do with social media to really target people locally and encourage them to visit through the launch phase. You're launching, so this is a PR opportunity, and you should be unashamed with how much you share about your vision and your mission and how excited you are with people, because other people will pick up that enthusiasm and you will be talked about, whether it's social media influencers or local press. Outside the store, flyers still work when you're first launching, and if you want to take it up a level, getting creative around kind of guerrilla marketing type campaigns is also effective. One thing that didn't make it in, but arguably should be there, is around Google Business Profile. Used to be called Google My Business. And getting that set up should be one of the first things on your list if it's not there already for the new store, and making sure it's populated in the right way. More broadly, local SEO, great opportunity for local businesses generally. Google particularly wants to serve up the right results to the right people, and often they're really looking at location as one of the key determinants of that. So even if they're not typing in something with location, if they're searching from their mobile phone, even a generic keyword, you have a chance of outperforming some of the biggest online only businesses and other alternative offerings outside of that local area in which the search was made. Making sure your website's updated to talk about the launch, making sure you have a website in the first place. If you don't, are obviously sort of foundational things to be considering here, adding the map on the site, adding the story of the new store on the site, updating the content of your site to reflect the story of how you've launched, really thinking about ratings and reviews, marketplaces, and many more. So there's a ton of things that we haven't even touched on here that we can pick up through the planning phase at the next stage. What is in, though, are 5 key things that really need to be considered here. So the first thing to note is that regardless of whether or not you have a defined timeline opening your first premises, you can be building your distribution. You can be building your community, your authority. You could be collecting emails. You could be building out your social media audience. You could be building your audience on a blog and taking people on a journey. You could be building your personal network in the real world. You could be building your personal brands. I think it's really, really important for everyone who's at the early stages listening into this, realize that a big part of your brand today is you personally, if you choose to unlock that potential. And your story, why you care, why you've started about this, what you want to do, what is the reason you get up in the morning to make this business work, that can enroll other people as well as getting you up in the morning. And ultimately, all of this builds towards giving you that ability for when you do open the doors for the first time to be able to communicate that to a much wider audience. So wherever you are on the journey, you need to be thinking right now, how am I building out my distribution? And how am I building out my own personal brand here? And we've got tons of stories, you know, from other businesses who've launched on the high street from a really strong footing because they have invested in their marketing and their distribution prior to the launch. Secondly is around collaborations. Now, you know, we've said for many years that being a busybody is better. You know, in your local community, it's not just about helping the high street, which it does, the more people that get behind being part of high street type initiatives, but it actually helps you directly as well as indirectly helping the overall high streets. Being connected to the local community through the period in which you're preparing to and launching has a direct impact on the footfall you can drive through the door. There's others on the high street nearby that you could build really powerful collaborations with. Walk up and down the high street once you've selected that space and you know where you're going to be, and meet the other business owners. Engage them on a personal level. Explore how you can help each other. And in many cases, there will be answers to that question. So many complementary businesses in high streets that we're really focused on now are working together to cross-promote audiences and do all kinds of other collaborations through to developing shared products, developing joint events, and much more. If there's a local traders group, join it. If there isn't a local traders group, speak to us, so we might be able to help you be part of the origination of setting one up on your local high street. And then you can be really at the core of driving that collaboration with others from day one. There's beyond traders groups, lots of other types of community associations and groups that you should get your head around and get to know. They're all there to help, and they all have audience. They're all, if you think about it, a bit like media. You know, if you can engage with the local community association in your local area and they can get behind and publicize your launch, sometimes they have thousands of members in that local community who will tell about you, as well as themselves becoming influential early adopters for your business. One of those groups as well is the council. And within the council, what's really important to understand is to navigate the different teams. Councils are big organizations, and some of the parts of the council are going to be helpful for you in different ways. So what the councils are really keen to do is get behind this new generation of high street entrepreneurs, setting up and helping them succeed. And one way they can really help, again, is publicity. They often have very large newsletters and social media followings in the local community. So if you can get to know your economic development or the high street growth teams and start to get to those marketing teams to share your story about why you're starting and how you're going to make this place a better place, they will get behind and promote you. Finally, find out about any other high street initiatives that are going on, whether there are events or promotions or campaigns that are happening, and get involved. Third point is around early adopters and really rewarding early adopters. Your first generation of customers are key. It's not just about the sum of the revenue they generate. They're going to help you build momentum internally for yourself and your team, but also externally to other people. They're going to open the door to various other things as well. Repeat purchase. So you build a loyal customer from day one, and they're coming back every day, every week, every month. You know, you have not just one sale, but multiple sales over time that potentially grow in value. They're also really powerful salespeople for you as well. So customer reviews are critical. And if you can get really focused around customers that love you, not just like you, go above and beyond for this first generation, and then ask them to spread the word. Ask them to review you on Google or Facebook or TripAdvisor. You know, whatever your business is, you can build loyalty with those customers, and those customers, how they talk about your brand to other people is much more powerful than any one brand talking about themselves. Generally, this whole idea about getting early adopters in and rewarding them, doing whatever it takes to draw that first generation in, is about building this feeling of momentum and buzz. You can use competitions and loyalty discounts and time-sensitive promotions. You can do things such as, you know, really think about going above and beyond the expectation of a customer when they come in. Give them an added value service in those early days. Doing this at the beginning will reward you later on. Fourth point I'm going to mention here is about geo-targeted ads. I'm going to be quick, so I'm conscious of time, but the advertising industry has evolved, and it's never been a better time as a local independent starting out on the high street to take advantage of a whole raft of different geo-targeting capabilities of a number of the major platforms. In social, a good start point is Meta, so that's Facebook, Instagram, and even WhatsApp and Messenger, with fantastic geo-targeting and demographic targeting capabilities. Beyond that, you've got a whole range of other social platforms that you're using at the moment, you know, such as TikTok, Pinterest, and a whole range of others, Snapchat. They're all very focused around getting the right targeting capabilities to compete with Meta. Google has had very focused geo-targeting capabilities for a long time. If you're a product retailer, you can not only just geo-target or geo-fence searches around your business, but you can actually add stock inventory into Google to serve that up. So people searching for particular products can be directed to your store. And there's a whole range of specialized behavioral ad platforms and real evolution going on with the traditional media platforms to keep up with this digital media innovation. It might be creepy how much these platforms know about us as consumers, but as a business, it gives you the possibility to now target the right people at the right time with the right message. Finally, I'll just go a quick mention about events. So, you know, I would say events is not a singular thing necessarily. Think about events as an opportunity to build a whole series of different events that really allow people to come and interact with you and build the human connection that John was talking about earlier. Loads of different sort of ways that you can think about this, but to start with, do not forget that however much in yourself you feel like this isn't something other people might be concerned or caring about as much as you do, Be proud of what's going on here. The launch of your business is an event in its own right, and it deserves an opportunity for people to come together just to experience and meet you. Even no more than that, it is an event and is a reason to promote and invite people in that local community to experience your offering and to meet you for the first time. Tons we could talk about marketing events, but I think maybe that's for another time. But the main thing I'll just say here with regards to events is, you know, when it comes to bringing people together in the real world, the key thing here is that you bring your own personality to life. You are a reflection of your brand here. Be authentic, be friendly, be keen to meet people and listen to what they've got to say about what you're planning to offer or what you're offering today. Okay, I think probably best if we move on to the final step here. I'll give a quick summary of this, very conscious of time. One of the main things I'll say here is that there are things you do now for the now, and there are things you do now that can also have a great impact in the future. Now, I'm not saying you don't do the first ones. You've got to get this launch as effective as possible, but it's good to understand those things that you're doing that are building you distribution, assets, knowledge, experience that you'll take forward to your success in the next phase of your business. Mindset is key. It's not easy being a high street business entrepreneur. It's a different lifestyle. For some people, there is no alternative, and that's all they want to do. And the connection with the human community around you is a big reason why people are and stay in business. But you really have to invest in yourself. Have people to talk to. You, as I keep saying, you are fundamentally important to the brand, yes, but also to the overall success of this business. So look after yourself and invest in yourself. To build a long-term sustainable business on the high street, you have to keep working at it. There isn't a switch off button. The market's changing continuously. We've said many times we're in the most transformational period in the history of high street, and it never seems to be irrelevant to say that. It keeps changing, new opportunities, new threats continue to emerge. But actually, you as a business need to continue working on the business, not just in the business, to stay ahead of the game, yes, but in a lot of cases to keep up. New goals to achieve, we've got a whole range listed here. But once you've got the launch phase there, a lot of the stuff we'll do to focus in with you is to zero in on those key goals that keep taking you to the next step. Growing online, boosting footfall, improving loyalty, like many others as well, reducing costs, securing funding. And ultimately, there will be people listening in, and there will be opportunities for the future to build the next generation of chains. Startups today who can build really successful businesses that sit on high streets, shopping centres and markets all around the UK. In terms of looking at the future, a lot of what we're going to focus on in the next phase, this planning phase, is laying out the long-term ambitions and the path to get there. But for the next step, and what we really need to focus in on as quickly as possible, is around that short-term action plan to launch effectively on the high street. So I hope what we've covered off today has been useful. It feels like potentially a notebook full of ideas for some people. And ultimately, as I said, we'll be in touch in the next phase around step 2 and the planning process. But for the long term, you know, we're here to help, and we're here to have a big impact for you and many of the others watching today. So John, I don't know if we have a few minutes now for questions. Looks like we've just got time for a few headlines.
Yep, there was one question about can landlords of any type not see the advantages of having shops filled?
So, I mean, I'll kick off with that, but other people might want to talk about this. So there's a really great opportunity at the moment for independents, like we laid out at the beginning. And one of the reasons for that is that we're in a bit of a vacancy crisis from a landlord's point of view in certain centres around the UK. And to plug that vacancy crisis, it's absolutely critical that as a landlord, they get the right businesses in the right places doing the right things, even if they're not generating significant income from those businesses individually. By having those gaps filled by new businesses, it improves the overall offering of a shopping centre. Now, this is much more pertinent when we're talking about shopping centres or landlords that have a big vested interest in an area. And we're working hard here to try and drive that collaboration between more fragmentedly owned areas. But today, as it stands, I think the question is very pertinent. They are aware of it. There are a number of landlords around the UK that we'll talk about in the next phase together, during that planning phase, about finding the right space that could be a good fit for you, who are really looking less about how much money can they make from you over the next quarter, but more about how can you help overall improve the offering of their centre or their high street.
Yeah, there's another question now. Is there any specific difference for non-for-profits? I suppose that might be a rates question.
Anyone got any views on that?
In terms of non-for-profits, are we talking charities?
I would assume so. Yeah.
And various other legal entities potentially.
Yeah.
Or CICs or CICs. Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of.
Right.
I mean, no, not that I'm aware of. I believe as a retailer, you'll be liable for rates even if you're the British Heart Foundation or the Samaritans or such like. Listed buildings come without rates, which is a different matter. But no, I don't believe that charities get benefit from rates exemption.
I think having some experience with this, so my computer's been playing up. But there is what happens is with charity, if you're a registered charity, you get up to 80% relief. Some local authorities, though few, will offer up to 100%. If you're a not-for-profit, again, it's somewhat at the local authority's discretion about how that then is applied. But generally, a registered charity, will get 80% relief. But in almost every local authority in the UK. But you have to be a registered charity. You can't just be, I collect money for blind dogs. So you've got to be someone who's registered on the system, and then you can apply for that. And then the rates still apply, and they pay the residual 20%, or in some cases, because the landlord's saving so much, they'll cover that 20% difference. But again, it depends on the deal you have.
Okay, and then we have another question saying that, how do I find out if I need to, or how do I go about changing the use of a shop? So that would, they can't find anything on their council website. So I guess it's change of use. They, I assume that, how would someone go about that? Anybody got thoughts on that?
It's generally done by the landlord, I think, isn't it? I mean, I'm a little bit grey. That might be Andrew, might be a bit clearer.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, a lot of commercial property is now lumped in under use class E. So whereas it used to be A1 retail, A2 financial services, and A3 restaurants, most of it is now under use class E. So if you are a restaurant, a bank, or an estate agent, or high street accountancy, or a shop, you shouldn't really have to go for a change of use. But otherwise, yes, it is to be done in conjunction with the landlord if a change of use is required.
Okay, so they should speak to the landlord about it.
They should speak to the landlord.
Yeah, exactly. Drop us a line, but Class E makes it much more flexible.
Class C makes it easier. Yeah.
Much more easier, unless you want to change to residential or other commercial uses. But John, with a couple of quick questions we might be able to cover here before people have to go. Just noticed one about whether we help people with an existing shop, which the answer is yes. I mean, that's core to the journey. I mean, from our point of view, we're really keen to see businesses not just launch, but businesses be successful for the long term. That's how you save the high street. You get the right businesses in the right places doing the right things for the long term. And the success of individual businesses drives the success of places. And so, we are working with businesses at each stage of the journey. Wow, there's more questions coming in. I mean, if everyone's okay, we can carry on and just finish these questions off.
Sure.
Yeah.
John,
The last one's interesting. If we go back, do you ever think that the council would explore pop-up space to allow multiple new businesses? That's Alex. I know that's something
I mean, this is stuff we're very close to at the moment. So we're looking at a lot of different initiatives in particular areas. So Ealing project, you know, we've done stuff in West London around this. You know, local authorities and private sector stakeholders such as the landlords and various others are really starting to come together around the reimagining of high streets and the use of these vacant spaces. And so, you know, a lot of the time, you know, the start point for us, we focus in on a particular area and really try and make it work. And I think, you know, looking at multiple businesses in the same spaces is something we've talked about so much, it's been touched on, I think, shared spaces. But we've been helping set these kind of things up where a big, empty or ex-department store, for example, gets reimagined into feels like a indoor market, multi-tenanted, curated with the right mix of businesses. And the councils definitely have a role to play within that. But the key is that we kind of work together, get the right entrepreneurs with the right ideas, really willing to make it happen. We help at every stage of the journey, bring together the landlords and the local authorities, because ultimately the success of these the reimagining and repurposing of these empty spaces benefits everybody.
Interesting question is, why do landlords let their shops empty for so long?
Well, it depends on the nature of the landlords, and really it's hardly ever in a landlord's interest to keep the shop vacant at all. Some landlords, it could be an institutional landlord who have many hundreds of shops under their ownership and don't have the time or capacity to fill the space. That is a big problem. A lot of landlords are under-resourced, and you know, once you've actually let the shop and you've you know, say on a 5-year term at a far lower rent than you had anticipated, you're there then stuck, really. So, you know, there's a bit of optimism. Is there something better coming around the corner for the landlords? That's all their mindset. And also they'll have banking covenants that they have to, or some will have banking covenants that they have to fulfill. So they'll have to get a certain level of rent to keep their lenders happy. So some may have their hands tied, but in general, it won't be the landlord who is on purpose keeping their shop vacant. There'll be external factors which is influencing them. But yes, I do agree. It is sad to see you know, a shop go to waste, but it won't necessarily be in the landlord's interest to do that.
And if there's a shop that's in mind with that, if there's a shop that someone's seeing on the high street that they would like to use that is currently vacant sitting, it's just to find out who perhaps the owner is and approach them. What they could also be on top of that is that there's an existing lease in place, which means then arguably the rates are still sitting with the leaseholder and not the landlord. So there's also a financial element there. But I would agree that no landlord worth anything would want an empty space, because empty spaces, of course, makes no money. And in terms of mitigating the issue in and around valuation and value of the centre, is that you offer a deal short-term, license-based, of which then potentially could go to lease. You know, you'd initially do that as a license basis, and then you'd have conversations with someone like Andrew and the team and talk about how it is that you then extend that to a step rent deal that allows all part. This in terms of occupying space, it has to be a win-win. No one's got to lose in the scenario. So we have to understand that the landlord has financial obligations, which is what the covenant is. It's like a mortgage they have to achieve, and in order to do that, they need to achieve a certain amount of rent per shop within a shopping centre, for example. So, but there is always a deal to be done. And if you think, for example, talking about projection of sales, in 5 years' time, I reckon I could be there or thereabouts. Then you come up with a step rent deal, perhaps with 6 months of rent free that was mentioned earlier, whatever it might be, that leads you towards that number. And most landlords that are worth anything will do a deal because they want the lights on and want someone occupying the space, because it can also become a systemic issue where you end up with 1 vacant, then 2, then 5, and then you're really in a difficult spot. So, but it's an interesting time, but a really, and I think myself and Alex and the team have been talking about this for a while. It's a really good time to be banging on doors and saying, do you know what, I think my offer will fit well here. Let's have a discussion about what we can do. And the team, again, can help design that discussion and the step rents and the way in which leases are, because I know a lot of people are frightened and scared when they talk about pax rent and so on. The team can assist with that and give you some guidance on how best to approach that and get the best out of the discussion.
Do you have any opinions on whether it's best to be a CIO or a CIC? Someone's asking about that. Is it? This was the same person asking whether there was any rates, any rates relief for a charity. Just thank you. Is therefore better to be a CIO rather than a CIC? Any opinion on that?
CICs, I believe, also again fall a little bit under non-profit, I believe. And again, Andrew might have a better view of this, but broadly, my understanding is again, it's somewhat at the discretion of the local authority. Whereas charities are well set, and there's there's a pretty much agreed position of 80%, whereas this is relatively new, but there are conditions under creating that. And also, I think it all stems back to profit. I think these things are non-profit businesses. And again, Alex, I think again has a bit more knowledge within this area, but there are conditions applied to that, which may, depending on the local authority, of which again, if there's an area you're thinking of setting something up like this, lift the phone to the rates department within the local authority and ask the question and saying, this is what I'm planning to do. This is the location I'm thinking of. What are there rates levies I can take advantage of if I'm setting this up in this way? But be aware of how those businesses are set up and run, and make sure that you are falling in the correct parameters and lines. Otherwise, you could fall back and be at 100% rates.
Yeah, and it's more than just rates as well. I mean, the legal entity in which you set your business up within has other implications. So it's about really looking at the full picture and understanding what those different implications are for things like rate mitigation, but others as well, and what's right for you.
Okay.
Not in UK. Similar
I think we
things.
started thinking of opening a business abroad. So I was saying, pretty much what we've spoken about today would apply anywhere in the world. There'd be some small differences, but these are all things in general to consider, no matter where you're opening.
We're so deep in the UK, but we get anecdotal insight about elsewhere. But I wouldn't want to say everything that we've said here is applicable in all areas, but a lot of this, will apply.
Yeah. And then someone was asking, do you need to get an accountant right away?
Well, I'd say, look, on step 2, where we talk about the plan side of things, we'll get into that, kind of where the gaps are in your business, and ultimately we can help sort of plug all of those gaps in different ways. And it might well be the case that having an accountant on board is a key thing that will be part of that initial short-term plan. But it's about what do you need them to be doing, and what skills do you have at the moment in terms of things like financial management through the setup of the business.
Okay. Well, any other questions? I think that's the answers, the ones that we have in the chat box. So
thank you, John.
If you'd like to thank everybody for today. It was very interesting and inspiring. Lot to consider if you want to open up a store, but there's help out there. Being an entrepreneur can be a very lonely world, but that's only if you choose it to be a lonely world. There's a lot of support out there, us and lots of different agencies, even the council can help. So don't be overwhelmed, just reach out and fill the gaps and get on your journey is what I would say. Any parting words, Alex?
No, just want to say a big thank you to everybody who joined today. As I said, for us, this is the journey. This is the kickoff of a whole series of things we want to be doing to provide space, support, and solution to entrepreneurs around the UK, and ultimately make it quicker, cheaper, and easier to launch your business into a high street. So, looking forward to seeing many of you on the next stage and making a big impact together. So yeah, thank you, John. Thank you all the panelists. Thank you everyone who's joined today. We'll see you soon.